can't believe this is real. JBL's top 5 pro wrestling returns. Is there anything that gets a cheap pop from the crowd bigger or faster than a return, an unexpected return? People lose their mind for that more than anything, don't they, John?
Yeah, especially when it's unexpected.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I was out there, you know, there's so much iconic stuff, you know, like the glass breaking and all of a sudden, or do you smell? And all of a sudden the place just goes freaking ballistic, man. I mean, it's been so much fun to be in places and to see, I've been there for a lot of them, to see these returns. You know, anytime Brock Lesnar comes back, man, holy cow. I mean, everything changes, the whole mood of everything. And all of a sudden you're just got a normal wrestling show and all of a sudden everybody's like, uh-oh, iconic moment. There's nothing better than a great return.
Well, let's get to it. The Dudley Boyz at the Barclays Centers comes in at number 5. This was a big return, and it wasn't that so long ago. It might not be on everybody's all-time list, but you were there live in the building doing commentary 10 years ago. It was the Raw the night after SummerSlam 2015, where the Dudleys made a surprise return to call their shot against New Day. Why does this one stand out for you so big, John?
I just think the reaction of it. I was doing commentary on it, and you know, you talk about great reactions, and all these returns have great reactions. This thing was unbelievable, man. I mean, that crowd went nuts. You know, it's so cool when you're sitting down there ringside because you're right in the middle of the arena, so you feel the crowd as much as you hear it. And man, when they came out, that place was rumbling. I mean, just rumbling. You know, that's their home. And all of a sudden the Dudleys come out, man, it was, here's the New Day is getting over like crazy. Here's this iconic tag team. That was one of the most fun things I've ever called.
The crowd reaction is one of the things that makes it so special. And you could, if you go back and you watch this clip on YouTube, you can almost tell in your voice how excited and over the moon you were to be on the call for this. But even look at the fans in the background. Everybody's on their feet. Everybody's ready for this. This pulled all of the nostalgia levers that you could ask for in the modern era, don't you think?
Absolutely. And that was Devon Dudley doing the Hindenburg splash. I used to always say, oh, the humanity, because he had the glide path of a sofa. You know, he'd climb up there, he just like fall off. It was so good. I told you, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. The crowd loved it. I was called, but every time he'd go up there, the humanity. Off the Hindenburg crashing.
Do you ever take a 3D through a table?
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah, I sure did.
How bad does that suck going stomach first as opposed to back first?
Oh,
I hope you
terrible.
never know the difference.
Terrible. It's so much easier going back first, you know, because you don't have to worry about, you know, anything, you know, going stomach first. Something's always wrong. Yeah, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. They were great with it. They're great workers and they were very safe, but that's not a fun finish.
Did you ever on any of the house shows, because I know sometimes you guys would ham it up. I mean, Owen Hart used to hit people with a bag of popcorn to see if they would sell it. So people were having fun. They're pulling out red noses. They're putting cucumbers in Undertaker's face. They're doing break dance offs. I mean, house shows were fun. I miss them. I hope they come back one day. But did you ever do the what's up spot? Did you ever do it? Like you and Ron and you're on the top rope and you do it?
We've done the what's up before. Yeah. And we never did the spot. We did the what's up and it was god awful horrible. I mean, exactly like you would expect. It was so freaking bad. I mean, it was terrible, but we did it. I mean, the only way Gary Hart used to always say, if they want you to be a clown, be the most professional clown there is. Be a real clown. So if you're doing it, you got to get into it. So me and Ron got into it. We did all the crazy stuff. It was preposterous how bad it was.
By the way, T. Gray has a great line here. He's with us here live on YouTube. If Godfather ever does the Devon spot with the glide path of a sofa, he suggests maybe the call, if you're lucky enough to be on the call for that, is blimping ain't easy, which I think is hilarious. Blimping ain't easy.
T. Gray, that is so good. I'm going to find some way to use that. I don't know how. I'm going to use blimping ain't easy. I promise you. I promise you. That's in the bag. Thank you, Greg. Thank you. It may be if I do allegedly do something with
Hamburgueso.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Oh my God. Oh, I would, if you're in Vegas and you want to bet on a line being said about Hamburgueso, if I indeed am out there allegedly at this event, I would put money on Blimpin' Ain't Easy.
Let's
Gray, you're the man. Thank you.
If you wind up using that, allegedly, hypothetically, if you wind up using that this weekend, we will have made wrestling history here today.
We will, and we're going to play the clip if I allegedly am out there and using it. But if I'm out there, there's a good chance Hamburguesa is going to be Blimpin' Ain't Easy.
I can't wait.
You know how they say here in Vegas, Blimpin' Ain't Easy. Very good.
You're ready. You're ready.
I'm ready.
Let's talk a little bit about your number 4 on the JBL top 5 wrestling returns list. Of course, we're doing this about AJ Lee's returns. We thought, why not just celebrate some of John's favorites? And here's one I would have never expected to be on the list. And we're going to learn something today. We're going to sit under the learning tree because number 4 is Rikidozan returning in 1957 to fight Lou Thez. You want to talk about an old school? Drop some knowledge on us, John.
Yeah, they did. They're in Japan. I don't know how many people were in Japan at that point. They claimed 87 million people watched the match. I mean, that's like a freaking Super Bowl in the United States. Rikidozan, who's one of the greatest stars, he's credited for creating Japanese wrestling, which is true. He was a great champion there, terrifically tough man. In 1954, he was the guy. Look at that short arm scissor. Oh my God, I hadn't seen that in forever. You could roll a guy up with that. You could roll a guy behind with that. That's where Bob Backlund ended up picking the guy up. But it's that old short arm scissor. Bob Orton's the one that showed me how to use that short arm scissor. I love that move. But Rikidozan took about 3 years off to promote wrestling, and Lou Thez became this huge star in the meantime, or at least his star got bigger. And then Lou Thez came back because he had won the title from Rikidozan, came back in 1957, and they had this iconic match, and it made Japanese wrestling one of the greatest matches in wrestling history, but one of the greatest returns as well.
You mentioned how many people were watching it, and I think this is the stat you were looking for. Lou Thez and Rikidozan got an 87.5 rating.
87.5. Yes. Sorry.
But what we're saying is if we were to convert that to what we call a share, that means if there were 100 television sets in Japan, 87.5 of those were watching this match. That's unbelievable. 9
out of 10 people in the whole country
watched it.
We're watching this match.
Yes.
That's how big this return was. I mean, that's got to be the greatest return ever. And it created everything we have in Japan now. This was all going back to this one match.
I'm looking right now. What rating share did the Super Bowl get this year? And see what we can get. And the answer is 83%. So you're talking about Lou Thez versus Rikidozan being bigger than the freaking Super Bowl. That's how many people were watching it. It's unbelievable when you think about it.
It's unreal. One of the greatest returns ever. Rikidozan, there's so much that's owed to that man. And Thez. Thez was the ultimate troubadour, go around the world, and the ultimate, he was a great champion.
Hey, I'm glad you said troubadour because I'll admit, not a huge country fan. And if I am, it's like old Waylon Jennings. But there's a George Strait song that they played at the end of the Undertaker series when they did like a countdown of his last ride, if you will, on the WWE network a few years ago when he formally retired. And they licensed that George Strait song. And Undertaker said that for several years there towards the end, he would listen to that song to sort of get in that frame of mind. Did you know that before you saw the documentary?
I didn't know that. No, that's the first I'd ever heard of it. I got the honor of not spending a whole weekend, but I got to have lunch with George and drinks with his son and him at one night. And a guy invited me over to the table and said, "Hey, sit down with us and meet my friend George Strait." And I thought, "Oh, that's cute. He's got the same name as the country star, but he's not this, you look at the pictures, of George Strait from 40 years ago. He's 40 years younger. He's a really good looking guy in the black cowboy hat, and he was there with the ball cap on and golf clothes. And I sat down and he said something about the Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio. The only way you know that is if you're a performer. And I thought, oh my God, I'm sitting next to freaking George Strait. When I left, my buddy's from England. He goes, "You act like that guy was a big guy." I said, "He's got more number ones than your stupid Beatles."
How about that? Well, let's talk about number 3 on JBL's Top 5 wrestling returns list. This is one I think everybody's familiar with. John Cena's Royal Rumble return. What a major moment this was. People didn't expect this. And he pops up out of nowhere. As a reminder, he tore his pec muscle in early October on an episode of Monday Night Raw. It was against Mr. Kennedy. Maybe that's a story for another day. But a lot of people expected he'll be out for 6 months. Little did we know, less than 4 months later, coming in at number 30 at the Royal Rumble in Madison Square Garden, no less. Not only does he come back, but he wins. What a moment this is. And I think a big piece of the magic is it was kept so secret. I mean, in those days, it felt like everything leaked. This didn't leak. What do you remember so fondly about John Cena's Royal Rumble return?
I remember thinking he's superhuman. You know, I was J.J. Watt last year, had that torn pec, and he played with it a couple years ago. I mean, you just don't do this. I mean, you don't do this. You don't come back from that. There's a simple window that you have to have for ligaments and tendons to repair. That's a major freaking illness. That's superhuman to come back in 4 months. I mean, I can't. It's just John is a genetic freak. And it is genetics. He, you know, they talked about he doesn't take drugs. I would bet the farm that he doesn't. And I've seen certain guys are born with, you know, these huge wrists, this huge strength. John's one of those guys. He's just a genetic freak. But to come back after tearing a pec in that short a time, I just remember thinking, this guy's freaking Clark Kent, man. There's something we don't know about him. I remember one time we were golfing and John was out there. We had like a dog leg left or something. John could hit the ball a mile, but not straight. And he hit a ball. He must have hit a ball 300 yards in the air, and it landed, you know, right among us because he couldn't see us. We're on the green around. I bet he hit the ball 300 something yards in the air. The damn ball hit. Now I did bet. I said I bet he bogeys the hole because he can't putt. But man, he is a genetic freak.
Number 2 on JBL's list of top 5 wrestling returns is Triple H returning after the quad injury. This has to be all about the crowd reaction. As a reminder, I think it was May of the prior year, Triple H tore his quad. So like 8 months later, he's back. But first, we saw a series of videos sort of recapping his recovery. And it was all set to U2's Beautiful Day, hyping his comeback. And I think most people would remember this as one of the loudest, most sustained ovations anyone's ever heard in Madison Square Garden. What do you remember about this moment, and why is it number 2 on your list, John?
I think because of what you just said about their reaction and the way he got hurt. You know, I can't even tell you the respect I have for all these guys and girls in the business that work like this and work injured. He tore that freaking muscle off his bone, and he still got put in the walls of Jericho. I mean, I can't even imagine somebody doing something like that. I can't imagine somebody doing something like that today. There's, I think, probably zero chance that you could do something like that today. They'd call the match off. They'd have the doctors down there. I think people had such respect for him because the way he got hurt and finished the match. I mean, that is a double tough dude that did that. And I think the response was when he came back, that's one of the reasons it was so big, because there was so much respect for him for what he did.
It does feel like somewhere along the way, and I don't pretend to think that this was it, but it may have been, that perhaps WWE's policy on how they promote, or maybe their best practice on how they promote one of their baby faces going down, one of their top stars going down with an injury, changed. Because this is really one of the first times that we saw them sort of acknowledging the injury, acknowledging the recovery. We saw footage inside the hospital. Him rehabbing the knee was set to a theme song. It built anticipation for the return, as opposed to it just being a surprise. And I think that's one of the things that makes it different is fans were ready for it. They were expecting it, and it was awesome. It's not that unlike the AJ Lee return. It was a worst kept secret in wrestling. People knew that was going to happen, but I think that's interesting that maybe the paradigm shifted a little bit after this, because once upon a time it was always a surprise. And here it felt like we're trying to get sympathy. And as a reminder, Triple H was a bad guy when he left. Right. So when he gets injured, he's a heel, but he comes back and buddy, he's anything but a heel when he returns. Was that by design? Do you think, did they know he was going to be a baby face when he came back? Because setting the that song to it does feel like unique treatment for a heel. He becomes a sympathetic figure, and he's an overwhelming babyface upon return.
Yeah, and I don't know if they knew or not. I think they could have probably guessed, and I think they would have guessed he's going to come back as a babyface. I don't think there's any doubt that's what they thought would happen. You can't tell exactly what the fans are going to do and what they're going to buy and what they're not going to buy. You have a lot of people that have been in business a long time make pretty good guesses, and I'm sure they would guess that's what would happen. I think that what happened with it was several things. I mean, you can do all the vignettes you want. But this old school training that you do, and you think this guy's working his ass off to get back, and you appreciate the mountain that he had to climb to get to where he is. The person that comes along that just has great ability, you think, I just showed up one day and was a wrestler. I'm not sure you have respect for his ability, but you don't have respect for the work that went into it. And I think once you see all this work that went into it, and the fact that he finished the match, all this stuff combined, here's the mountain he's climbing to come back. I think all of a sudden you're getting behind him. You're rooting for him. I think this is just booking 101. It's the same thing that guys did back in the day with Strangler Lewis, with Frank Gotch, with Gus Sonnenberg, with Jim Londos, with Lou Thez. They promoted stuff by training videos and showed how much that people had to train to be part of this business. It made people respect what they did. And I think that's what it was with Triple H here. People are looking at it. And these weren't vignettes. These weren't selfies being taken. Oh, here I am at rehab. No, it's here he is working his ass off at rehab. Here he is working his ass off in the gym. Here he is what he has to do to get back. Here he is hardly able to walk. Here he is getting better. And I think people look at this and go, man, I love this guy. Look how hard he works to get there. I think that had a lot to do with it.
I want to go down a rabbit hole here for a minute. Do you think wrestling changed, or did Vince change as far as that approach? Because if you go back to the 80s, man, how many vignettes were there of Ravishing Rick Rude or Hulk Hogan or guys like this in the gym? Like, I remember before Jake was using his theme music, there's a pretty classic video of Hulk Hogan lifting heavy weight to Jake's theme, and it's badass. It's super fun. But if you watch a movie like Rocky, man, there's always training montages. It became a trope.
Right.
But eventually it feels like maybe Vince changed his mind, and he felt like, hey, the only thing that we should cover are things that happen in the arena. So if you see a promo, it's a guy in front of a live crowd holding a microphone. We're not going to their house like the NWA used to do when Tony Schiavone went to Ric Flair's house and that sort of thing. Was that a Vinceism, or do you think just people's taste changed and they thought, oh, that's old and that's passe and that's played out? Or is it somewhere in the middle?
I think it's all the above is what I think it is. I think it's a Vinceism, but also Vince was the one that did the training videos too. I think Vince changed his mind a lot to try to stay ahead of the curve, or, slightly behind where the curve is. Certainly not be behind the curve. But I think you see what's going on, and wrestling is not a leading indicator for society. It's a mirror, so it's a trailing indicator. When you have the good guys no longer wearing the white hat, he's wearing the black hat. It's now Clint Eastwood that you don't really know. Dirty Harry is a good guy or a bad guy. You don't know if Stallone in Rambo is a good guy or a bad guy. And so all of a sudden society leads what people are doing. Now the anti-hero had gotten big, and you start to see that in wrestling. And I think you saw the same thing with the training videos. They were working, and then I think Vince just started trying different stuff. And once you start trying different stuff, you just kind of forget about it and want to keep going to see what works. Just because when you're doing 52 weeks a year, you're not always right, and you're always trying, and you're always throwing stuff at the blackboard. You just don't know what's going to stick.
Well, what we know is going to stick is this top five. We're just moments away from top one, the number one return in JBL's opinion in wrestling history. We want to hear from you. What are your top five? What did John miss? Let us know in the comments now. T. Gray is in with another little nugget of insight I appreciate. He's talking about the SummerSlam 02 matchup. He says, I still have vivid memories of the Rock and Brock training montages.
Yep.
I agree. I think we need more of those in wrestling.
Yeah, the Vision Quest type stuff they were doing, the stuff. I mean, that stuff is just, man, they used to draw 30 and 40,000 people into wrestling arenas before you had TV, off just training stuff they do for newspapers. It just, there's something to that people, these guys that are doing this stuff, especially a guy like Rock and Brock, they're freaks of nature. Let people see what they do. Don't just take a picture with them in their clothes. They look fantastic. Great big bodies, good looking guys. show what they can do. It's insane when you see these guys train. And so I think this is something that has always been a draw in wrestling. And I think it still is. I think people at times miss this stuff. They just go to the gym, here I am at the gym, putting the time in. Dude, please show me something that I can't do. Show me something that I want to look at and go, wow, that's awesome.
Well, without further ado, I wish I had a drum roll. JBL's number one wrestling return on his top 5 list of wrestling returns is Edge in 2020. Talk to me about it, John.
Yeah, Edge you talk about an incredible career, and you talk about everything that you want in a performer. He was a terrific tag team. He was a terrific babyface. He was one of the best heels, I think, of all time. I mean, he was so freaking good. And then all of a sudden you get that taken away. Not that, he retired just because he wanted to and do other things. He chose to, but his body gave out on him. His neck gave out on him. And all of a sudden you find a way to get him back, and unexpectedly, I just think it's one of the greatest returns in wrestling history. I mean, you've got CM Punk who came back. You've got a lot of great returns. The Hardy Boys that came back, I thought were fantastic. But Edge coming back to me, they're all great. We're talking about what's greater. I don't know if it's greater, but I think it can stand at the top as well as any of them can.
Of course, we all remember the real life Adam Copeland. We know him as Edge, had to retire in 2011 and get a 3rd level of his neck fused. And that gave a new meaning, I guess, to seeing is believing once his music hit and he walked out at the Royal Rumble in 2020. And it's really a pretty small number of wrestlers who have returned to in-ring action after having that level of fusion surgery. I mean, I'm not saying it's just him, but man, it is a short list. And one of his elements of his comeback that's been interesting is he's really tried to change his in-ring style. And I think that a lot of wrestlers have to do that as they get older, as their injuries start to stack up. But was there a time when you felt like you started to change your in-ring style, and what led to that?
The only thing that I ever turned down, and I regret it to this day, and I hated it, was John Cena wanted to put me, Orlando on top of his shoulders and me on top of Orlando and do a double F5. What do you call this thing he did? The FU finish, not the F5, the FU. And I knew I'd get hurt. I'd gotten hurt so much at that point in my career. Every time I took a bump, I was damn near getting hurt. And I thought, man, if I do that, I'm not going to be able to finish whatever we were doing. And I said, I felt so bad about it. To this day, I felt bad about it. I think it's the only thing I've ever turned down. And I knew that I couldn't do it because physically I knew that I couldn't take the bump. And I just thought, man, screw this. What an old piece of shit. I just felt like Vader after that pay-per-view match. I'm a fat piece of shit. I just felt terrible about it. This day, you tell me talking about it, I feel bad about it this day that I took that from John because, I wanted to give him everything. And I didn't think I could physically get up from it. And I knew I'd been hurt so many times that I didn't do it. That's when I started thinking, it's time for me to get out of here.
Well, it's time for us to wrap up the top 5. But before we do, I want to give a little love for Maddie, who shared his top 5. He thought the 3 faces of Foley at the Rumble in 98, Edge's 2020 Royal Rumble return, Bray Wyatt's 2022 Extreme Rules return, Undertaker's return at WrestleMania 20, and
I love when he came back as American Badass. I thought that was just freaking. That was unbelievable. And when I looked at it later, I thought that should be in the top 5, and it should be. It's certainly honorable mention. But man, that return as American Badass, that was awesome.
I think that was in Kentucky, wasn't it? He just choked.
I think so. Yeah, it was so different and it was so new. And man, people just took it. You try something like that, you think you've got the right idea, but that's such a divergence from the character. I mean, that could have been bad if people didn't buy it, and people bought it like crazy. It tells you how great he is.
SaveWithConrad.com.
My name's Daryl. Came from Massachusetts and I moved to Wisconsin. And there's a lot of people that might be asking, why go with Conrad? Why go with Supreme Lending? And let me tell you something, brother. I think about the credentials, the tag team partner that I'd be working with. First of all, we got the podfather himself, Conrad. How can you go wrong with that? And then also go on to SaveWithEric.com, which, who else could have kicked Vince's ass for 83 consecutive weeks? You can't beat that duo right there. But they did bring a secret weapon, and I didn't realize this because this was not advertised. I worked closely with Larry the Axe Thompson. And let me tell you, with all the stress with moving across the country with a large family that I have, it was reassuring to know that I had the enforcer at my back, handling questions from the other side of sellers, the other side with trying to find the right prices. He took care of all that. All I had to do was keep my eye on the prize and make it there to Wisconsin. They were absolutely fantastic. They checked in on me, especially Francis, very patient with me. I don't go through this process all the time, so I trusted the experts. I was able to call them. They called me if they had questions, and it felt like it was a personal arrangement. There was even a point in which, from the seller side, they wanted something else that wasn't part of the norm. Francis straight up told me, hey, we're loyal to you. We'll do whatever you want to do, and we'll make sure that you guys are taken care of. They came through. I made it to the dream. I'm the champion of my own destiny here. They were able to help pave the way for me and my family. I couldn't be more happy with the results. I went from having less than an acre to now 20 acres worth of land. They made that dream a reality. I'm Daryl, and I'm living in Friendship, Wisconsin, in my dream home, thanks to SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com.